Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 28th day of December, winding the year down now, 2020. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. And of course, up first again has this weather graphic. Not so much lit up on it as we had yesterday or over the weekend, but still carrying a high wind warning there for the eastern Alaska Range west of the toe cutoff through the passes. And that's, out until 9 p.m. this evening, Monday evening. And up until that time, continue to expect winds gusting above 60 miles an hour from the south. So it's a warm wind. And for the out west there, winter storm warning continues there for the lower Yukon River Valley area in the Yukon Delta. And that's out until midnight tonight as conditions slowly improve. Otherwise, could see another 1 to 2 inches of snow, winds gusting 35 miles an hour. Could be some areas of whiteout conditions and also throw some freezing rain, possible freezing rain thrown in the mix there too. That's until midnight tonight. Otherwise, we've got a winter weather advisory out, St. Lawrence Island and south coast of the Seward Peninsula, White Mountain, possibly Golovin, Nome, and then on up to Teller, Tin City, and Wales. And also for the north side of the peninsula there for Shishmaref, winter weather advisory for snow, areas of blowing snow, reducing visibilities, and I don't think much of a chance of any freezing rain there. And also there's also along the northwest coast as well, Kivalina on up to Point Hope. And for the satellite imagery, you can see big cyclonic circulation centered west of the Pribilofs there in the western Bering Sea. That was that intense low that's been slowly weakening the last couple of days, or 36 hours or so, and now pulling a little bit back to the west over the western Bering Sea as it swung up from the south, kind of rotating back westward now in the retrograde of the general motion. And that front, as a result, really washing out as it moves north there across the St. Lawrence Island, the Bering Strait, in across the Norton Sound. And you can see really broke up there along the Yukon River, then kind of clouds enhance again over the Kuskokwim Valley to the Alaska Range, and some more breaks there west of Cook Inlet, especially southern Cook Inlet, Copper River Basin showing some breaks up as well. So really taking a beating from what it was 2 days ago, and holding together a little better there for the North Gulf Coast, and then extending southward. It looks like another wave southwest of the Panhandle. And otherwise, generally variably to mostly cloudy skies for the southeast coast today. And precipitation, heaviest Kodiak Island, 24-hour amount there was 1.5 inches of rain, while Seward picked up 0.8 of an inch of precipitation, all falling in the form of rain. Homer, actually southern Kenai Peninsula on average had around half an inch of rain in the last 24 hours, with Homer having the least amount, and in places like Port Graham, Seldovia having more. And otherwise up to the north, more of a wind pattern, windy condition for south central Alaska, with winds gusting at the Anchorage International Airport this afternoon as high as 36 miles an hour last time I looked. And Rabbit Creek, gusts 57 miles per hour to the south-southeast, and then Arctic Valley, gusts to 71 miles per hour, but they're up there a ways, 3,600 feet, so they're definitely the higher elevations you always hear about in these wind forecasts. The Arctic Valley's definitely one there, as well as Glen Alps, and Glen Alps had about 52 miles an hour. Otherwise, Turnagain Arm, east winds blowing 40 to 50, maybe gusts 55 miles an hour in those exposed areas there, Beluga Point, McHugh Creek, Bird Point. And also for Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, winds today gusting 40 to 50 miles an hour, so kind of a brisk wind day in Prince William Sound with areas of rain along the North Gulf Coast into the northern Panhandle, with that weak warm front kind of moisture streaming northward there, increasing along the coast of the Panhandle, but amounts not very significant, as well as over the interior. Snowfall amounts weren't all that great, at least the amounts I could find that fell today. Nome picked up, they had roughly, Sleepmute had 2 to 4 inches of snow, with snow falling there. Nome had about an inch, say 1 to 2 inches maybe. Otherwise, to the south, fell in the form of rain, snow mixed at the most, with Pedro Bay, and this is a 24-hour amount. They picked up about 1.25 inches of precipitation. Otherwise, with that slowly weakening low, still a pressure of 958 millibars there. And winds pretty gusty. Nikolsky south, 50-55 miles an hour for the wind gusts there, and Cape Newenham. Gusts 50 to 55 miles an hour as well today, which was considerably down from what they had yesterday. And then up on the northwest coast, some blowing snow possibly going on up there with Point Hope seeing winds gust 46 miles an hour, and then not so windy down toward Kotzebue, Kivalina, and dry for the western or all of the Arctic coast with the lightest winds on the central and east side, and variably cloudy, light winds over much of the east and northeast interior today. And for tonight, look for the system that we saw kind of move northward there along the frontal boundary, and that's going to start to increase the winds along the coast of the Panhandle, as well as a potential for rain. Otherwise, it'll stay light rain or snow, or rain and snow mixed at times for the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound, but probably again raining on the light side. Should stay dry for Cook Inlet, and basically dry over the central and eastern interior all the way up to the Arctic coast. Lingering snow showers from the, say, western Koyukuk Valley across the Kobuk Valley, a little more widespread there along the Noatak Valley northwest coast. Could still see some blowing snow areas, but again, conditions gradually improving throughout the night tonight, especially this evening, or especially after midnight. Chance of snow or snow showers, Yukon Delta coast, Nunivak Island, scattered rain and snow showers with that low. That's up toward the Alaska Peninsula, and a front brings more rain out over the Aleutians. Kind of frontal boundary develops there with that low becoming about stationary and continuing to weaken. Now the 982 millibar low south of the Alaska Peninsula spreads rain to the southwest coast of Kodiak late tonight, and then that'll result, as it moves right across the island, periods of light rain and fog for all of Kodiak Island tomorrow into Shelikof Strait, and the trough along the North Gulf Coast swinging up. Keeps it another wet, unsettled day, periods of rain, definitely clouds, lower flying conditions, North Gulf Coast, into the Panhandle. And snow showers, mostly the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, dry in the interior, isolated flurries, I'd call it, for the Brooks Range in the northwest part of the state, but generally nothing significant. Even over the southwest mountains there, Togiak Bay, Dillingham, Auckland Mountains, whatever falls will probably be less than an inch. And then for the day Wednesday, pretty big improvement there over the Aleutians until late in the day. Then the big winds come in. Kind of the timing a little iffy right now, but definitely will show up there. So look for the winds to increase over the western central Aleutians throughout the day. Otherwise, the southeast Bering looking really good. Widespread VFR, clear sky, sunshine, eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, dry, light winds, kind of the calm before the storm. Kodiak Island, mostly sunny, light winds. Leftover moisture with a weak trough keeps some scattered rain or snow showers in. Pretty isolated there for the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, possibly western Copper River Basin of the Talkeetna is really not very significant at all. But that's about it going on. The trough action there over the northern Bering Sea will probably bring some light snow or snow showers across St. Lawrence Island into the Bering Strait, but even that doesn't look too significant. And kind of breezy there over the western North Slope, Arctic coast into the Brooks Range, say maybe gusts 30 to 40 miles per hour. Dry, light winds, mostly sunny. Northern central Panhandle, risk of a shower down to the south with a very weak trough there connected to that 1,002 millibar low near Vancouver Island. Otherwise, Arctic high pressure will keep it, well, a little cooler, but still not too terribly cold there for the North Slope and the Arctic coast with clear skies and kind of a east-northeast breeze going. Looking at the low temperatures for tonight, call it 5 to 15 below there for the North Slope Arctic coast, into the maybe 10 below for the Yukon Flats, and either side of zero on down the eastern interior to the Alaska Range. Single numbers, Copper River Basin, 20s. South central Alaska, mid-30s for Kachemak Bay and Kamishak Bay, as well as Kodiak Island, and upper 20s northern Panhandle, otherwise mid to upper 30s elsewhere. In the lower to mid-30s for the Aleutians and Bering Sea, and your high's not much different for tomorrow. Upper 30s near 40 Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, upper 30s Pribilofs, near 30 St. Lawrence Island, and 0 to 5 above, or 5 below to 5 above, eastern interior, and definitely below zero North Slope in the Arctic coast of maybe 5 to 10 below. Mid-teens, western interior, lower to mid-30s to near 40 for Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, and the Alaska Peninsula. Lows Wednesday morning, 10 to 15 below, or 5 to 15 to maybe 20 below there for the North Slope, and 5 to 10 below for the northeast interior. Single numbers there from Anatuvik Pass to Bettles on down to Tananoff. Fairbanks just above zero for your lows. and 4 degrees for Gulkana, and highs mid-20s to mid-30s southern Alaska.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic Tuesday morning. IFR there from the Chukchi Sea across the northwest coast, from the Bering Strait actually, eastward along the Brooks Range and southward, at least into the northern portions of the Kobuk, Koyukuk Valley, into the northern and northwestern Yukon Flats, actually extending along the Yukon River. And then looks like mostly IFR there for the most of the Yukon River Valley, lower Yukon River Valley, out to the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, Nunivak Island, St. Lawrence Island, IFR, VFR, St. Matthew Island across the Pribilofs to Fox Islands, Alaska Peninsula, and then marginal VFR with areas of IFR across south central Alaska, or for the areas east and south of the Alaska Range there, Copper River Basin of the North Gulf Coast, IFR across the northern Panhandle. For the afternoon, IFR still up over the northern interior. Looks like breaking out to VFR for the central and part of the eastern Arctic coast up there, and some VFR, Tanana Valley, Greater Fairbanks area to Tanana, down into possibly Denali and the Sitna Valley, northern Cook Inlet, with VFR extending southwestward to at least across Kuskokwim Valley there. Then IFR over the southwest mountains along the southwest coast, Yukon Delta coast, and St. Lawrence Island, and pretty good VFR from Kiska Island eastward to Atka Island, and marginal for the Fox Islands and Pribilofs, VFR Alaska Peninsula, and some IFR still for western Prince William Sound up into the western Copper River Basin, Talkeetnas, and into the northern Panhandle. And for Wednesday morning, areas of IFR there along the central and eastern Brooks Range down into the upper Yukon Valley, VFR, the upper Tanana Valley, especially around the Fairbanks area there, and then deteriorating conditions off to the east and also to the west, with IFR right up to the Alaska Range, western Alaska Range, actually spilling in through the Kamishak Gap there into Kuskokwim Bay, into Kamishak Bay, and possibly far western Cook Inlet, but marginal VFR south central Alaska with some IFR. And pretty good solid IFR there, Kuskokwim Bay, northern Bering Sea through the Strait, and northern Seward Peninsula. Widespread VFR there for the Aleutians and southern Bering Sea, Pribilofs to the western Alaska Peninsula, and from False Pass all the way to Kiska. And some VFR finally showing up over the central and southern Panhandle over the inside waters, otherwise marginal for the North Gulf Coast. Passes for Wednesday afternoon, jumping ahead of myself here. And for Wednesday afternoon flying weather, we've got widespread IFR there over the southwest interior, pushing it actually into the western interior, back up to St. Lawrence Island, most of the Seward Peninsula, and areas of IFR also up over the northeast interior. And south central Alaska, marginal VFR, eastern Copper River Basin on down the southeast coast look pretty good with VFR, and really nice out over the Bering Sea. The Aleutians, all VFR, as well as the Pribilofs and the Alaska Peninsula. Now for passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, IFR throughout the day on Tuesday. Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR to start, improving to marginal in the afternoon, and rainy, marginal VFR at times throughout Tuesday. And for windy, marginal VFR to start, becoming VFR, so some improvement there. Isabel, occasional IFR possible, may improve in the afternoon or not. And for Mentasta, looks like VFR, possible marginal VFR again on the southern entrance, but nothing too serious. Tanita, VFR on the western approach and marginal for the east side. Portage, IFR possible on the eastern entrance and better to the west with Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels at the surface, North Gulf Coast, cutting down across the Panhandle, and then north of St. Matthew Island there, but south of St. Lawrence Island, 2,000 feet up in toward the Barren Islands and the southern Kenai Peninsula, and then along the central and south coast of the Panhandle. Icing, areas of considerable moderate, mostly along and off the coast there. Barren Islands up to maybe Cordova toward Yakutat, otherwise lighter icing in the shaded areas there, becoming more isolated and less significant out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Jet stream, well to the south there, 125 knots, barely on the chart. So moving on to 9,000 feet, southeast 50 tomorrow. Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, southern Panhandle from the southwest, westerlies 40 out over the Aleutians, and 40 to 45 knot westerlies for the Aleutians, turn 50 knots out of the southeastern Bering Sea. up to let's see, 60 knots out of the east-southeast there for the eastern North Gulf Coast, and moderate chop along the eastern North Gulf Coast tomorrow, turbulence-wise. And moderate chop also expected over the southwest interior, southern Cook Inlet, and the Kachemak Bay area.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, joined again by Eric Stevens of GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And Eric, thanks so much for joining us again tonight.
Happy to be here, Dave.
Thanks, Eric. And we've been talking about the complex gathering of information from satellites, looking down on the surface of the planet, and some of those orbits around the planet work for Alaska, and some of them don't. There's a lot of challenges with those. How can we get better imagery for the poles and specifically for Alaska?
Right. Well, today we're going to talk about a very interesting kind of satellite orbit that has potential to be real helpful for the high latitudes.
Okay.
Especially us here in Alaska. Canadians, Russians, Norwegians will all be interested in this. The satellites are not in orbit yet. Now the future is uncertain, but it's possible, and if this happens, it will be wonderful for Alaska. Okay. It's called the highly elliptical orbit.
Oh, that sounds
it's interesting. Yeah. And I think first, to help our discussion, we should get back to some of Kepler's laws and how do satellites work.
Sure.
Kepler's first law, an orbit of a planet around a sun or a weather satellite around the Earth is not necessarily a circle, it's an ellipse.
Okay.
And the highly elliptical orbit takes advantage of this aspect. We're going to put the Earth in one of the ellipse and then stretch one of the foci of the ellipse and then stretch that ellipse out real far to make it highly elliptical.
The foci is that bend part of the end of the ellipse. If you're going to stretch out a rubber band, that would be the center, kind of the stretchy part.
Yes.
Ends. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then Kepler's second law says that the closer something is to the thing that it's orbiting, the faster it goes.
Okay.
We see this in the solar system, that Mercury flies around the sun real fast. Jupiter, much slower. Jupiter's further away, it's slower. Mercury's closer in, it's faster. This happens with weather satellites too. Even satellites like the International Space Station, it's pretty close to the Earth. It goes around the Earth in only 90 minutes.
Okay.
That thing is moving.
Fast.
It's only 250 miles away. So how can we take advantage of these two aspects of Kepler's laws of motion to get better weather surveillance of Alaska? And this highly elliptical orbit is going to be the approach. So we have with us today our friendly planet Earth and our simulated satellite, the lid off of this salt shaker
like
here.
Sputnik there. Yeah.
There it is. It's shiny, it's metal, it's space-worthy. And what we want to be able to do is, could you have a satellite hover over the top of the world, up over Alaska? You can't really do that. Geostationary satellites have to be over the equator.
Okay.
So how could we almost solve this? And this is the tricky part. Maybe should we tilt the Earth over?
Focus on the pole. That's what we're trying to accomplish here, right?
So here we have the northern side of the planet, and we're going to trace out the orbit of a satellite with this salt shaker lid here. Now imagine a highly elliptical orbit. So let's put the Earth in one of the foci of the ellipse, and we'll have an imaginary foci out here. So the satellite will not go in a circle around the Earth, but will be in this long strung out ellipse. So the satellite will go...
Kind of like a racetrack.
Yes, there you go, like a racetrack. So it's an oval elliptical shape like that. And notice now that when the satellite's over here, we've got a nice view of the northern hemisphere around. There's Alaska, Russia, Canada, Greenland, all there. So that's the ellipse aspect of an orbit, Kepler's first law. The second law saying that when you're further away as a satellite, you go slower. And this we can take real advantage of. Because the way this orbit works, when the satellite goes over Antarctica here, it's going to be close to the Earth. It's going to be moving, whoosh, goes on by. And then as it comes out here, it will slow down. This increases what is known as the dwell time. The satellite will just hang here looking for hours at Alaska and the high Arctic. And then eventually it will come around and it will accelerate and whiz around the South Pole and then come back and hang here for a while because it's further away from the planet. It goes slower. It has to. That's the laws of motion. And such like that, repeating.
Wow.
Now the real important way to make this work is you have to have two satellites. So that while one is whipping around the pole, you've got the other one out here, and they work as a team. You could then get a series of images of Alaska that can be almost from a quasi a constant frame of reference,
Right.
and you can loop them together to make movies. You can take a picture every 10 minutes, say, of Alaska, and then loop it, playing it at several frames a second. You could see the clouds whiz on by. You know, the Weather Channel, weather broadcasters in the lower 48 especially can show these movie loops from the geostationary satellites. In Alaska, we've never really been able to do that very well, especially in the higher, most northern parts of the state, because those geostationary satellites are over the equator. It's not a good view. And this highly elliptical orbit whipping around the South Pole and then dwelling up here would be a way for us to get that constant frame of reference and do really good weather surveillance over the Arctic, seeing where those storms are, where they're going. Nothing quite like a movie loop of the weather in time to really illustrate what's important, what's going on.
And compared to what we have right now, we just have small windows or snapshots of what's going on with the polar orbiters. We don't have that long range view that's looking top down to give us that complete motion picture that helps us understand so much of the atmosphere at this
There's
point.
so many different kinds of satellites. Each has their advantage. Each is important, and the highly elliptical orbit satellite will also fit into that scheme. It's a nifty idea to solve an Alaskan challenge.
That's fantastic. Well, that sounds really exciting. And again, kind of a satellite dream of the future to come. Okay, very good. Thanks for joining us today, Eric. We really appreciate the information. And if you'd like to learn more about what Eric does at GINA, at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, we invite you to visit the web address that you see on your screen there. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis showing lesser ice with warmer temperatures and wind for Bristol Bay, and to a lesser extent there along the Kuskokwim Delta coast south of Nunivak Island. And not much change, kind of a westward drift to the pack ice there along the Yukon Delta coast on up into the Bering Strait. Not much change there occurred for Cook Inlet. And coastal water forecast for tomorrow: gales all along the coast, 35 knots out of the southeast on the south coast, north coast, same direction at 40 knots with 20-foot seas. Lynn Canal, northerlies at 15, and Stevens Passage, southeast 25. Small craft advisories also in the forecast for Clarence Strait for southeast winds 25 knots. Wednesday, north 20 for Lynn Canal, otherwise north 15 Stevens Passage, and Clarence Strait northwest at 15 with 3 to 4 foot seas throughout the inside waters. And for the south coast, northwest winds 20 knots, seas 14 feet. West-southwest 15 to 20 for the north coast. Prince William Sound tomorrow, small craft advisories northeast 25 for the winds and seas at 5 feet. Gales for the eastern North Gulf Coast, northeast 40 knots, 17 foot seas. And then northeast small craft advisory speed winds there for the western North Gulf Coast, the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, southern Cook Inlet, all at 30 knots, and northern Cook Inlet northeast at 25. Those fall back to about 10 knots on Wednesday for northern Cook Inlet, north 15 south of the Forelands with 4 foot seas, northwest 15 knots for Kamishak Bay. Small craft advisories for the Barren Islands and western North Gulf Coast, where winds will be westerly at 30 knots, and southwest 25 knots there for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Prince William Sound, northeast winds coming down to 15 knots, seas at about 3 feet. Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, east 30 knots, 8 foot seas. East side of Kodiak Island there, marine areas, southeast 30 knots, 14 foot seas. Gale warning, Sitkinak to Castle Cape, southwest 35 knots. And then just under gale force threshold there from Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev, looking at southwest 30 knots, 18 foot seas. South 30 on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Gale warnings for Bristol Bay, east 35 knots. Those drop off to about 15 from the southeast for Bristol Bay on Wednesday. And the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, southeast 20, 7 foot seas. South side there, east at 30. And then southeast 25, Sitkinak to Castle Cape, west 25 for Shelikof Strait, and southwest winds 30 knots along the east side of Kodiak, Fognak Islands. And for Unalaska Island, southwest 25 to 30 knots tomorrow. Unmak Island, west-southwest at 30 knots, seas up to 22 feet, highest on the Pacific side. And west-southwest also for Adak and Atka at 30 knots, southwest 30 for Amchitka Island, and gales for the area from Kiska to Shimia, west winds 35 knots. big increase in those winds on Wednesday. South 60 knots there from Shimianatu to Kiska, spreading into Amchitka. Seas building 25 to 30 feet. Storm warnings coming into the central Aleutian. South 55 knots there for Adak and Atka. And for Unmak Island, kind of a variable small craft advisory level wind condition there. South of the island, northeast 25, south 30 on the north side. Lighter winds for Unalaska Island. And for the southwest coast, gale warnings along the Kuskokwim Delta coastline there. East 35, small craft advisories. Or actually, brisk wind advisory, Yukon Delta coast, east 25. Small craft advisory, St. Lawrence Island, east 25. And southeast 30 knots for the Pribilofs, east 30 for St. Matthew Island. And the outlook for Wednesday, lighter winds along the southwest coast, southerlies 15 to 20 knots, seas up to 7 feet in the ice-free waters. Pribilof, south 20, 10-foot seas, south 30, 10-foot seas, St. Matthew Island, southeast 20 with 7-foot seas for St. Lawrence Island. And the eastern Boulevard Sea coast, northeast tomorrow, 10 to 15 knots, northeast 15 on the central coast, west side, brisk wind advisories, all the way down to Cape Thompson, east-northeast 25 to 30 knots, and then 20-knot winds from Cape Thompson to Wales. And for Wednesday, east 20 Cape Thompson to, or from Wales up to Cape Thompson, and then Cape Thompson up to, say, Point Ley or so, east 30 knots for brisk wind advisories, central and eastern Arctic coast, east-northeast 10 to 15 knots. And for tonight, system increases the wind and rain along the southeast coast slowly, and a weaker system keeps it unsettled over the Alaska Peninsula, looking into Bristol Bay, but that will spread rain up to Kodiak Island throughout the day tomorrow as it weakens, and it looks wet along the North Gulf Coast and Panhandle. A weaker front for some precipitation out west, and then stronger winds again enter the picture out over the far western Aleutians and the Bering Sea throughout the afternoon hours. Thank you for joining us. See you again tomorrow.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.